a little thing, a little fervorino I call Mondays with Mike, and it's kind of my stand-up comedy routine disguised thinly as adult education over in Caldwell. So as I promised Sandra, I said, it may not be educational, but hopefully it'll always be entertaining. So as we go through all of this. Yesterday, we began this great holy season and the beautiful gospel of, from St. Matthew, giving us the 3 disciplines of Lent: prayer, fasting, and almsgiving or charity. So calling that into mind and in expanding those, prayers not just for ourselves, but for the church. We always pray for all of us together. And then acts of penance that we do not just to be doing something, but hopefully means something to us. And then charity, the great virtue which takes us outside of ourselves and directs us toward others. The 3 are meant to be seen as a unity, not as individual disciplines. And so hopefully, and we're still in the warm-up days, everybody asks, how do you get 40 days of Lent? And if you looked in your missalettes or your little prayers, you'll see, or on your calendars, today is officially the Thursday after Ash Wednesday. Tomorrow will be the Friday after Ash Wednesday, the Saturday. Then we get to the first Sunday of Lent, okay? So this is pre-season right now. This is warm-up. And so then we get to the first Sunday of Lent, and then we'll roll through to Holy Thursday, roughly noon, and that gives you your 40 days of Lent. And then Holy Thursday afternoon, we begin a whole new season of the Sacred Triduum, the holy days. Okay, so if you follow along at home or online, however you do, the weekday readings of Lent are very specific. These first 4 weeks focus really on my sin and how am I going to change. Today's gospel reading was great. It's one of the scandalous things that Jesus says in the Gospels. If you will be my disciples, you must pick up your cross and follow me daily. Well, you got to understand the background. As they're tromping along the dusty Holy Lands, the Romans left the crosses up on the hills as propaganda. They were the first ancient billboards. You mess with us, and this is what you get. So you can picture his apostles walking around picking up the cross, and they're seeing remnants of previous crucifixions all around them. And they're like, I'm not so sure about this. I'm not so sure. Now, to make it more applicable, Jesus doesn't say all these things just to give us more work to do. Everybody's got. There's a purpose. And this is why I write none of this down, so it can't be held against me, but it makes sense to me. My theory is Jesus says we have to pick up our cross. Why? When we get to the pearly gates, the door lock on the pearly gates is magically going to reconfigure for our cross to be inserted, turned, and the doors will open. If we don't take our cross with us, we ain't getting in. Now, if you don't believe me, that's fine, because this is not church teaching. This is just Mike. But I cannot think of any other way why Jesus would make us carry our crosses every day. Except we're going to need it at the end. Okay. So, I could be all wrong, but who knows? Hope not. Well, no. Okay. So, the first 4 weeks, the readings are reminding us of really our need to change. And then, week 5, it's like the movie Jaws. The little fin comes out of the water. Dun-dun, 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 dun-dun. The tension builds toward Jesus' upcoming passion and death. the scribes and the Pharisees, the Sadducees. What are we going to do with this man? And then Palm Sunday and the events of Holy Week. So that's the structure of Lent. So these first weeks, we really focus on ourselves and what do we need to do to become better. And the goal of Lent is very simple, that we change. We change for the better. May not be a huge change, but that we make progress. And I think it's always important. We think lots of times in either black or white, 100% or nothing. Well, it's not that, you know. I grew up in a very black and white world, and it's probably the hardest part for me becoming a priest. My dad was a building contractor. And so if the blueprint said you build the wall 48 feet 6 inches and this wall 23 feet 9 inches, they'll hook together, and if you do that, the house will go up. Well then, fast forward and a couple decades, become a priest, and it's like the only thing now that's black and white are my clothes. It's like, what was that movie? There aren't 50 shades of gray. There are about 50,000 shades of gray that we have to deal with in our daily lives. And as priests, how do we place and how do we care for people wherever they are along this spectrum? It's not just all black and white. And the same with us. We may not attain our goals, but are we making progress? And the goal is conversion. The Greek word metanoia literally means to change the way we think. To change our mindset so we think more like Christ. The great chastisement of Jesus, it'll be coming up here later on. Get behind me, Satan, after Jesus says, or Peter says, oh, no, Lord, you can't be crucified. Get behind me, Satan. You are thinking as humans do, not as God does. He wants us to think like him so that we work more closely with him. And when we work more closely with God, great things happen. And Jesus wants this all for us because God's great goal is that everyone who lives will be with him forever in heaven. That's God's greatest desire since the creation of the universe, that everybody be with him in heaven. One of the great, I should have checked this out first. Okay, good. Okay, one of the great things about coming to most Catholic churches is you're looking at the crucifix, And it's that constant reminder, he didn't do that for fun. That was not fun and games. He did it so that the gates of heaven would be open so when we get there, we have a chance to go in. That's God's greatest desire. And so the more that we are able to change our lives to be more like what Jesus taught us, great things will happen. Okay, so far so good? Okay, now, I should have put the other ones up too. If I would have known the RCIA people would be here, I would have had the parallels, but I have those memorized because I passed that test in the seminary. So, the readings for Lent are very specific. We're on a 3-year cycle for Sunday readings. This year is Luke's year, year C. So, every year, regardless of the cycle, the first 2 Sundays are the same, just depends on which evangelist that comes from. The temptation in the desert's always the first Sunday. And so we all know this one. We have last year we had St. Mark's Gospel, which was the shortest temptation. It takes all of 2 sentences. This year we have Luke's, which is the longest, but the most known. Turn the stones into bread. Because he was hungry. He'd fasted for 40 days. Jump off the temple and the angels will catch you. Pride. Look at me, Worship me, and I will give you all the kingdoms of the world. Power. 3 of the great human deficiencies. Immediate gratification, pride, and power. Right? Jesus shows us how to overcome those. Stays calm, addresses the issue, and moves on. Doesn't get all worked up over the temptations. Okay, the second Sunday is always the Transfiguration. By small t tradition, not big T, small t tradition, Jesus' transfiguration on Mount Tabor took place roughly 40 days before his passion, crucifixion, and resurrection in Jerusalem. So it's put on the second Sunday of Lent. Now, the third Sunday is where things will change, especially for the RCIA masses. Okay, for the regular masses, the year C reading, the fig tree. The gardener, the master, the owner of the orchards comes and says, I've planted this tree and I can't get any fruit. It's been 3 years. Gardener says, give me another year. I'll fertilize it, water it, and then we'll see before you cut it down. Time to change and repent. Little did the owner of the orchard know that fig trees need a minimum of 3 years to produce fruit, and it's usually not until the 4th year. The gardener had one over on him on that one, which I always think insider trading information is always good, right? Now, for the RCIA people, your year A readings, which are the oldest readings, initial readings for Lent, dating back to the 300s, you will have the Samaritan woman at the well. Jesus says, give me a drink. And then she goes, give me this living water, baptism. Okay. Then the fourth Sunday, where we're going to be here to do tonight, the prodigal son. We know this, but hopefully you might get a few new insights. That's fourth Sunday is Laetare Sunday, rejoice. Okay. The prodigal son, rejoice. Okay. He who was lost is now found. And then for the RCIA masses, you will have the man born blind. Jesus says, what do you want me to do for you? How about the winning lotto numbers? No, I want to see, the eyes of faith. Okay. Then the fifth Sunday this year, we have for the regular masses, the woman caught in adultery. The only time Jesus writes on anything in the Gospels. Nobody knows what he wrote. My guess is always, where is the man? Because the Gospel says, this woman was caught in the very act of adultery. Well, it takes two, right? And by Moses' law, both were to be stoned, not the woman. Then for the RCIA masses on the 5th, one of the greatest scenes of all time, the raising of Lazarus. God, I love this one. The most accurate line in all of the Gospels. Jesus says, take away the stone. And Martha, bless her heart, says, Lord, there will surely be a stench. He has been in the tomb 4 days. So I was telling some of the folks before, I spent 2 years in Cali, Colombia, between 85 and 95 degrees all year round. Averaged 2 funerals a week for 2 years due to the Cali drug cartel. And let me tell you, Martha was absolutely correct. But then, even best, remember, those of you my age or older, the Mummy movies on black and white. Lazarus, come out. Bound hand and foot, just like the old mummy. So great. I love that gospel. And then we go in to Palm and Passion Sunday. It's the only weekend that we have 2 gospels. The beginning of Mass, Jesus' triumphal entry into Jerusalem, and then the gospel during Mass, Jesus' passion from the year that we read. So this year is Luke's Passion, which has some of the great uniqueness as the good thief on the cross is only found in Luke. So we will hear that today, this year too. Okay, so I kind of give you an overview. Okay, so conversion. We're all here because we want to be better. I hope. Maybe you don't have anything else to do on Thursday night. Amazing Race is over on Wednesday, so what do we do? Nothing else to do. Okay, so the prodigal son. Almost everybody has heard this parable, but we have to put it into perspective. It falls in chapter 15 of Luke's gospel. Chapter 15 is lost and found. Okay, we'll pull out the prodigal son, but it's not a standalone parable. It's in conjunction with the other two parables in Luke's gospel. The lost sheep. Will not the shepherd go and leave the 99 to retrieve the one that is lost? No, that doesn't make good business sense. No, yes, he does, and brings him back. And then the woman who loses her coin, lost one of her 10 coins, her dowry, sweeps the house till she finds it. Okay, the lost coin. And then the third in that series of parables, the lost son. They all fit together for a couple different reasons. In each of the ends of the parables, there is always the phrase, what was lost is now found. But in each of the three parables, which is why it fits for the fourth Sunday of Lent, is the word rejoice. Rejoice with me, because the sheep that was lost is found, the coin that was lost. Rejoice with me because my son was lost and now he is found. And so, all three, lost and found, but causes for rejoicing. Hence, the joy of Lent. Yeah? This is a great season in which we can truly rejoice over the fact that if we're lost and we move in the right direction, we will be found. It's all about direction. As I tell folks, Jesus has already done the difficult part, okay? It's our responsibility to move toward him. So often we sit on our dove and say, okay, Lord, I'm ready for my miracle. Come, Lord Jesus. It doesn't work that way. You say, come on, show me a little effort. You know? Open your heart a little more, keep coming. It's like teaching a little kid to walk sometimes. You know? And if you're like me, you'd end up in the emergency room, banging your head on the edge of the coffee table. You know? Not proudly do I say I've had over 200 stitches. My poor mother, she will go straight to heaven, having to raise a child like me. You know? So the lost son. Keep that one in mind. The first part is very important, and it comes from the beginning of the chapter before we get into the parable itself. This is the prelude to all three parables. Tax collectors and sinners were drawing near to listen to Jesus. Okay. Them. Okay. Them, they're going in the right direction. The tax collectors, St. Matthew, you know, the most despised people next to the Romans themselves because they were Jews working for the Romans to collect the taxes, you know, legalized thievery. I mean, if the tax was 4 drachma, but they could get 6 out of you, they got to pocket the other 2. Okay? So, and then sinners, that's kind of the code word for prostitutes. Tax collectors and prostitutes were drawing to listen to Jesus. But the scribes and the Pharisees began to complain. Okay, scribes and Pharisees. Pharisees, the easy way to remember Pharisees as opposed to Sadducees. Sadducee begins with an S. draw 2 vertical lines through it. They were the wealthy ones. They got their reward here on earth, so we don't need a heaven. Okay? It works in English, doesn't work in Spanish. Pharisee begins with a P. Okay? Purity. So they're the ones who followed every one of the 613 laws of Moses, thinking, if I follow every one of these laws, I will be holy. The scribes, they were the official interpreters of Scripture. They usually sided with the Pharisees. So that's why it's usually Pharisees and scribes are together. They kind of hung out. So here we have these people thinking, I am doing exactly what I need to do, and I am holy. So why is Jesus always butting heads with them? The letter of the law or the spirit of the law? And Jesus is always trying to expand their notion of what does this law really mean. And they keep going back because their comfort level is like this. You know? Jesus wants us to have great peripheral vision, not tunnel vision. He wants us to be able to see across the spectrum, and that way some things we can say, no, that's not right, or that's not for me. But if I am only tunnel blind, I am going to miss the glory of God that exists out here as well. And that's what Jesus is always fighting throughout his ministry. Tunnel vision. And in a real sense, conversion, changing the way we think, it's like trying to expand our peripheral spiritual vision. Does that make sense? Okay, so all 3 of the parables, the lost sheep, the lost coin, and the lost son, are directed at the scribes and the Pharisees. You've got to keep that in mind, because there's no reason they wanted to nail him to the cross. It becomes pretty evident here down the road. They didn't like being, really, you might say, the subject matter for his parables, because they were 100% convinced we have it right. Okay, so here's the parable. 2 sons, we know the story. Younger son says to the father, give me my share of the inheritance. He actually wasn't entitled to any share of the inheritance, being the younger son. But give me. Self-centeredness. Charity takes us out of ourselves, right? Discipline of Lent. Don't be self-centered. Give me. So the father, generous, splits it evenly. He doesn't even have to do it. But he gives him his inheritance. And so the self-centeredness continues. It picks up steam. Okay? Now this guy's on a roll. Got a pocket full of cash, and he takes off with no common sense and blows through it in no time flat. Just, squanders it. I love that word, squanders. Which is something we sometimes do with God's graces. Squander them. I mean, God, the Father, the generous Father, the loving Father, is, of course, the representation of God showering us with his graces and blessings. But the more I think of myself, the more I squander those graces. I have a lot of theories, thousands of them, can't prove one of them, but we are called to be heat pumps. They have a heat pump at your home? Okay, heat pump, it takes in the cold air at 40 degrees, and out comes 7 degrees of heat in your house. Or it takes the 90-degree heat outside, changes it, and you have 65 degrees air conditioning inside. We're called to be heat pumps. We're called to take God's graces and shoot them out to other people. not be the black hole of outer space where even light cannot escape. We're not called to be hogs of God's graces. We are called to be the vehicles that they're transmitted to others. But the younger son, all about me. And quite honestly, in the confessional, I would say roughly, you got to remember, you're all holy here. In Caldwell, we have 2 priests, 2 hours of confessions on Saturday, 2 priests, an hour and a half of confessions on Tuesday, and then another hour of confessions this morning. Okay. And it's like boom, boom, boom. Probably at least 80% of sin occurs when I'm thinking only of myself and I'm not paying attention. I would say just my unscientific keeping track of sins. The more I'm focused on myself, the more I will fall into sin. Because St. Augustine had it right when he says, great line, love and then do what you will. If we begin with love, it's pretty hard to sin. If I begin thinking of myself, well, I already got 1 foot in the hole. But if I'm beginning with love, then it's difficult to sin. So, the boy gives us the great example. One of my favorite t-shirts I ever saw. We could use this for the younger son. It said, as long as I can serve as a bad example, I'm at least good for something. And I think of that with the younger son, you know. Of course, this is not the example to follow. Okay, so, you know, he gets, blows his money, and as the story has it, of course, the depression hits, can't get a job, all the people that he spent the money on abandon him, and he goes out working with the pigs. Now, there are a couple things with that. It wouldn't have been as scandalous for Luke's community because they were Gentile converts to Christianity, as this line would have been for Matthew's community, which were Jewish converts. But regardless of the community, it was about the second lowest job you could have. The lowest job is the charcoal burners that take the green wood, burn the green wood to make the charcoal that then you use in the home to cook with. Just above them were the pig keepers. Okay, so you're pretty low on the socioeconomic scale. Nobody gave him anything. Still thinking about himself. But then the great line that St. Luke puts in there, coming to his senses. Now, the whole goal is not to make God have to pull a St. Paul on you. I tell folks this. St. Paul's fervorous, persecuting the church. Paul, do I have your attention now? This is what I want you to do. Don't make God have to do that, like the young son. Don't get to the point where it's like, okay, do I have your attention now? No. The more we cooperate with God, the easier things are going to be. Don't make him have to get our attention the hard way. Because if push comes to shove, and I tell the little kids this, God is like your parents. They will always win in the end. God will always win. And whatever he has to do, he will do it to get our attention. So, coming to his senses, he looks back and then begins the process of reflection. Now, hopefully, reflection is something we do on a regular basis. How's my life going? Am I doing well with what Jesus taught me to do? Am I, doing the best I can? Am I still trying? And I always say, that's the one thing that God will be able to judge all of us on, regardless of our talents or our shortcomings. did we try? Because that is one thing every person is able to do. Some folks, granted, have more talents than others. Some folks have more limitations than others. But everybody in his or her own situation is able to try. And so he has all the right to go down that checklist and say, did you try? And so the young boy, is now realizing, I didn't try very well. I was self-centered. I was obstinate. Any other adjective you want to throw at him. If I go back, I can ask my Father just to be one of the workers, because they have it way better than I do. And so, self-reflection. He's still kind of self-centered because he's going, well, I could still get a job and I could still have food. But the change occurs in a couple lines later. I have sinned against heaven and against you. He actually says the words. And that is the part of conversion that is so important. I need to change. Once we hear it, and that's really one of the values psychologically, even more than spiritually, of the sacrament of reconciliation, of going to confession. When I hear myself say the sins I have committed, hopefully now I am more attentive when those temptations come down the road in the future. And I will pay more attention to them. And hopefully not repeat them. Okay. So he makes the conversion. He gets up and goes back. Okay, the right direction finally. Finally, he's headed in the right direction. He was on his own direction. Now he's headed in the correct direction. And then one of the great lines that doesn't get translated exactly correctly, but when his father caught sight of him, God's always waiting for us to come to him. He was filled with compassion. Now, compassion is the Latin word compatio, which means to suffer with. Okay. The Greek word is a fun word to say. Splunkna. Splunkna. The splunkna means his innards were turned. It wasn't just, that was the effect that his son coming back to him had on the Father. He was wrenched with joy, but it was that deepest. That word also appears in Mary's Magnificat. He has compassion on his people. It's just that attribute of God that when we come back to him, it touches God at his deepest core. Going in the correct direction. And so, since the Son made the effort to come back, now God comes. Grace is coming to him. The Father goes out and meets him, kisses him, the embrace. And so the Son has rehearsed his line. We all know this, Okay, hearing sins, it's always like, because most of the folks still after the pandemic go behind the screen. And so when I hear this, unfolding their paper, I'm going, oh God, hang on. And so, okay, bless me, Father, for I sin, blah, 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 blah. So, and I kind of think, okay, well, to each his own. But the Son has rehearsed his spiel. His act of contrition to the Father. I have sinned against you, and I've sinned against heaven, and I do no longer deserve to be called your son. Which is a true statement. What he did when he was self-centered was truly an offense against the Father and against the law that had been handed down from Moses. That's a true statement. Just as in the Mass, the truest words that we say are, Lord, I am not worthy to receive you, but only say the word and I shall be healed. Those are the most accurate words that we say. And the priest says them the same. I'm sure, ask Father Emmanuel, Father Vitalis, standing behind the altar to say those words. First of all, what am I doing standing behind the altar? I'm not worthy to stand back there either. But the loving Father says, no, you're moving toward me. Don't worry about whether you deserve it or not. You are moving toward me to receive my love. And that is pretty incredible. That is pretty incredible. And that is one of the great aspects of our faith, is that God's not out there, Yahweh, or God's not over there, Allah. God is right here in our midst. Our God became human so we could understand this. Okay, so the restoration. Bring the robe, put the ring on his finger, put some shoes on his feet, blah, blah, blah. Let's celebrate. Dun, dun, dun. Okay. Oh, but wait, there's more. Now we know the rest of the story. Scribes and Pharisees, the older brother. Now, the older brother, in all honesty, had every right to be upset. His words are accurate as well. The Father says to him, your brother, okay, we sometimes forget this, your brother has returned. This is when the servant, son comes in, or the older brother comes in. What's going on? Your brother has returned. Okay, but he wouldn't go. We don't want these tax collectors and prostitutes with us. They're not good enough. And Luke's community would be going, because they were all Gentiles. They were the tax collectors and the prostitutes. They were born outside of the Jewish law. They're us. Luke's gospel is our gospel, unless some of you grew up with Judaism, but that were born in the law. Luke is writing for us, those outside Judaism, the converts. And so, the brother won't go back. He won't accept God's graces. And that becomes really a point of emphasis for Luke throughout all of his gospel, is that, are you going to receive God's graces and use them, or are you going to let them pass you by? And so this is very poignant. And he's addressing it to the scribes and the Pharisees. So, they're kind of starting to get the point when their ire is starting to get higher and higher and higher. And so, the brother finally meets the dad. Now the servant says, your brother. But the son says to the father, your son. He cannot bring himself to say, my brother, your son. Luke does this one more time in the parable of the Good Samaritan. He's asking the scribes and the Pharisees, who is the one that shows the man that was beaten up compassion? And they answer, they won't say the Samaritan, they'll say the one who showed him compassion. Luke puts these in there to put for us as a reflection. Are we welcoming these people in to truly make them our brothers and sisters? Or are they just kind of tolerated? It's really a good point for reflection, you know. And so, the great reconciliation, which leaves it in limbo because we don't know how this whole situation was reconciled in the end, but the Father says, everything I have is yours. Don't forget that. But we must rejoice because your brother was dead and now has come back to life. These new people are receiving God's graces as well. Lost and found is how the parable ends. What was lost is now found. And, you know, reflecting on this, I think as we go through Lent, the image I like the most is the image of a funnel. Okay, so you got the funnel. What we're trying to do during Lent is put a funnel right above us so that all of God's graces will flow into us. Collect as many as we can to flow into us that we will then be more able to share with others. In the same vein, though, we're like a thermos bottle. Well, those of you who are my age or older remember a thermos bottle. Okay, that's before they had to-go cups, okay. So you'd put your green Stanley thermos bottle and preheat it in the morning and then pour the coffee in and take your coffee to work with you. And it'd roll around the back of the pickup and it'd be all dented, but it never leaked. It was the best. Okay. Well, at the end of the day, came home from work, you know, and had to clean out the thermos bottle. So you put the soapy water in there, you know, shake it around and pour it out and then put the water in. Well, I always had to do the dishes, and I wasn't the brightest kid. And so it took me forever to figure out that if I put the thermos bottle right under the faucet and let the water run into the thermos bottle, it would push all the soapy water out of the thermos bottle instead of pouring water in, shaking it out, and putting more water in, shaking it out, and putting more water in. You know, cut the time down immensely. Well, it's kind of our spirit. I was thinking about it. It's kind of our spiritual journey. Sometimes we do it the hard way. You know, other times, if we just put ourselves right below God's graces and let Him fill us up, it will push the sin out and make this process of conversion easier. See how simple it is? That was always my line in Spanish Mass. Fácil. It's easy on paper, right? Yeah. But then sometimes our humanity gets in the way. So, how did I do? Oh, pretty close. You don't know how hard it's been to go this long. I did. I mean, I could have done this whole thing in one of my 5-minute homilies on Sunday, but true, you laugh. No, go ask the folks in Caldwell. They're most happy. I don't think our pews are as comfortable as yours. Yours look pretty comfortable. Ours aren't that comfortable. Okay, now I was supposed to have questions and answers. Unless there are questions first about any of this. Did I go too fast or hope not? Question or just scratch? Thanks. Ooh, I forgot something. Oh, sorry. Here's the points for reflection. Do I want to change? That seems like a simple, oh yes, I want to become. No. In my innards, in my deepest core, do I really want to change? Because this is really what Luke puts forth with these. Do you, his community, want to change? Because we can go through the lip surface, but as you know, the only person we can change is ourselves. Can't change anybody else. And I told that to a couple in marriage prep. I said, now, if you haven't learned this by now, the only person you can change is yourself. You can't change your spouse. I'm thinking, oh, baby, they haven't learned this one yet? We might take these steps a little slower now. And then secondly, what do I need to do? It's, conversion is kind of like a little game plan. In Lent, businesses have a 5-year plan, and we have the 40 days of Lent. But I always ask folks, look at the eternal plan. What's going to get me to heaven? Because, quite honestly, we can do just about anything for 40 days. 40 days is nothing. Okay, but am I willing to use these 40 days to begin the process that I will continue for the rest of my life? That will move me closer to heaven. So, what do I need, or do I want to change? What am I willing to do? Now, here's the key. Told you we're in warm-up season. So if you had your Lenten practices and penances already, and you're thinking, oh God, Father, just shot those down the drain. No. Be realistic and set yourself up for success as opposed to failure. So many people say, Father, I'm going to read the Bible for 30 minutes every day. I ain't going to last. And I'm sure enough right, I said, no, start off with 5 minutes the first week. And then maybe increase that to 10 minutes the second week. Build it up so it becomes part of what you do and part of who you are. Then you will be able to continue it on for the rest of your life. If you just have the 40-day mindset, well, yeah, you'll make some progress by the end of Lent, but is it just going to stop? Hopefully most of us have more than 40 days more to go with the rest of our lives. But the whole idea is setting us up to keep on going. And then the third part is, okay, what do I need to do? And have your game plan. I'm a big fan of organization. For me, spontaneous is the code word for failure. Organization is the key to success. And some people think, oh, but I'm open to God's graces. Good, but what's your plan? I'm open to God's grace. You told me that. What's your plan? How are you putting those graces into use? Oh, I have to do that? Yeah. Kind of like the folks, I've turned my life over to God. They hate me. I said, He doesn't want it. He gave it to you. Boy, that deflates their balloon in no time flat. No, turning our life over to God's a cop-out. Living my life with God's graces is what He wants. And making the changes along the way. And then remember, it's not all or nothing. Some success here hopefully will spur us on. And if something's not working, change it. It's not like you're stuck. No. Make the changes, adapt as we go along. St. Paul is a great example. The way he spoke to the Galatians is way different than the way he spoke to the Corinthians. And the Ephesians, they were a whole nother group. He adapted to the circumstances. And that's for us as well. as we may be getting along during Lent and say, this area here I really need to address. Okay, pick that up, and I can continue that on for the rest of my life as well. Actually, you guys smile much more than the people do in Caldwell. I'm really impressed. I actually liked it when we had to wear our masks to church. And I told them, I said, now I don't have to look at your somber and joyless faces for 45 minutes. It was the truth. Now when they don't have to wear the mask, I was like, I'm back to my antidepressants. And I said, you don't know what it's like to stand up there. Look. Amen. And with your spirit. It is true that it's. I told him one time, I said, I had to get it right. I had to actually go check. In one of the Harry Potter movies, the guards at the wizard prison were called the Dementors, I think. And the way the guards kept the wizards in the prison is they sucked their souls out. And so I said, did you guys work at the prison of Azkaban? You're sucking the life out of my soul. Can somebody smile, please? Anyway. They'll be glad when I'm gone. So, any questions about anything? They will open it up for anything. Except trigonometry. I don't know much about that. Pretty good with geometry, but not. Questions? Spiritual journey? Yes.
What you said on one Sunday, there's the part of the church does this and then the other, what RCIA does.
Okay.
What does that mean?
So the question was, I said, when we were going through the structure of Lent and the Sunday readings, why do the RCIA have different readings than the other people, the real people? Okay. So the whole idea is year A, which will be next year. So the Sunday readings are on a 3-year cycle. Year A, B, and C. It's Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And so this year we're in year C, Luke's cycle. But year A readings are the original readings that when Lent was structured as we know it now in the mid-300s after the end of the persecutions. And so these were the original readings that the Christians picked out, the church picked, to describe the process of the catechumens that the rest of the people were to be praying for during this season of preparation. And so the year A readings pertain specifically to RCIA, to the catechumens, and their journey toward the Easter sacraments.
And is that reading dependent on which mass you do?
Right, we switch the scrutinies around, like one's on Saturday night, and well, we only have 2 English masses, 3 Spanish, but so like we just alternate, the catechumens will come to the Sunday morning mass one week and Saturday night, and so however you do it here, so 9 o'clock consistently, so. And whoever schedules readers, make sure you call them ahead of time to know that you'll be doing the year A readings. And they come prepared for the year C readings. That's not what I practiced. Fake it. Good question. So, anything else? Yes, we did. Anybody remember what it means? And what does it literally mean in Greek? To change the way you think. Change your mind. As long as you remember splunkna, your innards. Splunkna. Yes. Sure, anything.
Place in the Bible where Jesus is sending out disciples, and one man says to him, I want to go before you, but I have to go back home and tell my family where I'm going. Jesus says, anyone who puts his hand in the plow and comes back isn't fit for the kingdom of heaven. So I'm wondering, how can I fit in?
Oh, no, piece of cake. So the question is, Jesus is receiving disciples, and one man says, let me go back and say goodbye to my parents. Okay. And so Jesus uses the great analogy. You have to play this out in your mind. Anyone who puts his hand to the plow and keeps looking back is not fit for the kingdom of God. Okay, what happens? You put your hand to the plow, but if you're looking back, you're not moving toward God. And even worse, you're going to keep going in circles eventually. It's all geography. And so the idea is not because the man wanted to say goodbye to his parents, it's that Jesus says, in one interpretation, bring them along with you. But come follow me. It's much like the weekday reading last week, the rich man who comes in and says, you know, what do I need to do to get to heaven? Yeah, give me the checklist. Okay, well, you know the commandments. Don't commit adultery, honor your father and mother, you know, blah. I've done all of those. Now, this is the example, remember, as long as I serve as a bad example, I'm good for something. This is another one. Don't keep asking God too many more questions. I've done those things. What else do I need to do? Jesus Christ. In my own warped mind, I love picturing these scenes. Jesus, I kind of picture Jesus going, hang on, baby. He goes, if you really want to be perfect, go and sell what you have and come follow me. And the man went away sad because he had many possessions. Now, we don't know how the story ends. I give the guy the benefit of the doubt. It was the gospel of St. Anthony of the Desert, goes into church, hears that gospel after his parents had died, goes and sells the family farm, takes care of his younger sister and trusts her to good women, and then he goes out into the desert for the rest of his life and becomes one of the desert fathers, eventually going in to help St. Athanasius in Alexandria in Egypt combat the Arian heresy. But I give the guy credit. He asked. We don't know. Maybe he got home and thought about it, because not everybody works on immediate response. And folks always said, you know, before you make a major decision, sleep on it. So maybe he went home, slept on it, and then said, okay, and then caught up with Jesus later. We don't know. But Jesus says, you know, how hard it is for the rich to enter the kingdom of God if they're just focused on their wealth. It's easier for a camel to go through the eye of the needle than it is for a rich person. He never says it's impossible. I mean, I give credit to, I don't remember her name. Just a second. Steve Bezos' ex-wife, you know, when they got the divorce, she gave away how many $1 billion? All of the divorce settlement to the different charities, so it wouldn't be a distraction to her to keep working with. I can't remember her name. Francis is something, I think.
So I don't want to take away from that story that Jesus was saying something
Right.
like, go away and don't tell your wife where you went. She's going to starve, and she'll never know what happened to you. That's not the point of the story. That's what was bothering me. He said his parents, but when I first read that, I thought he had a family and wasn't even going to tell his wife.
Oh, no, no.
But so the point is not that Jesus is saying something to this guy that will cause his family pain.
No, it's not to cause your family. Well, I got to tell you, though, when you tell your mother that you're going to go to the seminary to be a priest, she's not very happy. Now, once the process was finished, she thinks it's pretty cool when we're out traveling and we don't have to find a mass on Sunday to go to because her son can do one right there in the hotel room. So it's not such a bad deal anymore. But Jesus isn't saying that. The boy asked, or the young man asked, what do I need to do? And so he had, you might say, the first level. He had the first part down pat. Oh, the plow. Oh, okay.
He says, I want to follow you.
Yeah.
And Jesus says, don't go back and tell your wife and family where you're going. Just disappear and they'll starve. But that's okay.
No, that's not the image. The image is you're going to keep going around in circles and be stuck. Yeah.
So that's not what I just mentioned. That's not the point of that at all.
No.
That's what you said.
Yeah.
Follow me.
Yeah. We want to be linear, not circular.
Have you also heard that it's possible his parents were young and it would have taken years for them to die? And so he was delaying wanting to follow Jesus. It's like, when my parents die, then I'll come.
Yeah. I pulled that trick with God. It doesn't work. I'll get around to it, Lord. Kunk. I tell you, most of my images are personal experience. Don't make God pull a St. Paul on you. Trust me. Just cooperate with him. It's just a lot easier. Kunk. And everything, is prophetic. Before you're ordained, you have to do retreats. So the retreat director I went to before I was ordained a deacon, he says, okay, Mike, very wise man. And he goes, we're going to focus on prayer. I said, I've been going to a Benedictine seminary for the last however many years. I said, we got this down. He goes, no. He goes, we're going to put it in the context of priesthood. I said, okay. He goes, it's the one thing that'll keep you grounded. And then got through that, ordained a deacon. Came time for priestly ordination. So I go back to Father David and decided, okay, got it all set up. He goes, this one we're going to talk about is obedience. I said, well, he goes, no, trust me. He goes, when you're in an assignment that you really like and the bishop calls you to move, he goes, you'll be glad you had this retreat. So I was 1 year a parochial vicar at St. Mark's in Boise, 2 years in Cali, Colombia, recalled a year early to go to Gooding, Wendell, and Shoshone. After 3 years there, I was sent to Idaho Falls with the missions in Mud Lake and Roberts. Then I had my stint in Reno, then came back and had Rupert. After 3 years, was moved to Twin Falls. After 3 years, moved to Moscow. After 1 year, moved back to Twin Falls. For 5 years, thought, I'm going to get a full assignment. And then moved to Caldwell for now in my 4th year. So he was prophetic, He never once talked about celibacy. Well, I asked him. That's the end of the story. The story was like, I said, well, what about celibacy? Because I said, don't even worry about that one. That's the easy one. You're going to be too tired at the end of the day to worry about anything like that. So, cooperating with God. Any other questions? Comments? Suggestions? Be careful which horse you hook your wagon to. I still think about it. I've still spent more time in the pews than I have behind the altar. So my whole goal is to live to retirement age, because given the history of the men in my family, that's not necessarily a given, because I'm already the oldest male. I have been for 5 years, and so I still have 6 years to go to retirement at 70. If I live to retirement, then I will be able to say I've been a priest half my life. I may make it to like 70 and a half, and then God goes, see ya. Okay, question. Sorry, yes.
So the gospel, you're talking about the prodigal son, and it seems to just leave you hanging with the older son that's not accepting. Can you delve into that? How we should perceive that or look at that or use that in life first?
Well, the way that the parable is structured, that's a great point, is Jesus leaves that hanging for the Pharisees and the scribes. Because they, as the older brother, Jesus is extending the invitation to them to broaden their horizons. Now, whether they accept that invitation or not is up to them. Jesus is never going to force anybody to do anything. And so he gives them this opportunity. You know, do you see yourself in the place of the older brother? And are you going to change to be more like the gracious Father? And so, yeah, there is no resolution at the end of the gospel, or end of the parable. But it's the invitation that Jesus gives to them. Now, we know the end of the story. No, they're not going to accept that invitation. They're going to stay tunnel visioned all the way through to his crucifixion. But then that's also the point of reflection for us, too. Are we going to stay tunnel visioned, or are we going to accept the invitation as well? Parables? Parabolas? Why is Jesus always using parables? Well, you think about it. A good storyteller is hard to beat. I still think of Garrison Keillor, Prairie Home Companion, on Saturday nights on public radio. A great storyteller brings you in, but it also allows you to use your own imagination. I mean, I've shared some of the crazy thoughts that I have, which are not church teaching. But the whole idea, though, is it gives us the opportunity to enter into this scene to say, how do I relate to the point that Jesus is trying to get across? And, my dad, who was a building contractor, as well, was a great storyteller. And he, was good stories. And it was, always with a result, hopefully, that I would understand. He puts it in terms that people can understand as well. It's not as dogmatic. You have to do this, this, and this. Yes.
In a lot of the healings, after Jesus heals people, he tells them, go home and don't tell anyone. Why does he do that?
It's called the messianic secret. And in Luke's gospel this year, you're going to hear a lot of that. Luke has more healings, more miracles than the other three gospels put together. Luke's big on dunamis. Here's your vocabulary word. Dunamis. Dynamic. Comes from the power. Jesus' power. Because his community, they had Zeus, and Hera and Athena. They came from all those Greek gods. And Luke's going, hey, I got a deal for you. You think they can do this? Ha! Watch Jesus. But part of it is that he doesn't want the people focused on tricks. Okay? And, for us in this day and age, folks want tricks. One of my other theories is the two greatest threats to our spiritual life have been the invention of the drive-through window and the vending machine. Because we are now so accustomed to throw in some coins, press a button, out comes a can of pop, or we go to the first window and say, or to the speaker, I'd like the number 6, supersize, please. That'll be $8.72 at the first window, please. Pay, pick up our stuff, and we keep on going. We think God should work in the same way. And we'll say, Lord, I prayed a rosary, where's my miracle? Yeah. Show me your tricks. And, God loves our prayers, and He loves it when we pray, but He wants to see our commitment to the process as well. And that's sometimes hard to get across to people because, I've been doing so well and blah, blah, blah. Like the young man, the rich young man that, went into, heard Jesus. But why are things not going the way I want them to? And then that becomes trying to change the direction, the orientation from me to God. What do you want of me? It's kind of fun to watch some of those. The miracle that I like the best is the 4 guys are carrying the paralytic to Jesus, and they can't get in because the crowd's all around. And so we were in church one time and reading the story. So they take off the tiles off the roof to lower the man down. And my dad goes, if we would have put that roof on, that guy'd still be paralyzed. They must have been lousy roofers. But in that story, there's a line that gets overlooked. And it's very specific. Jesus saw their faith, the guys carrying the paralytic. It wasn't the paralyzed man. It was the guys carrying the paralytic. And it was their faith and their dedication that then effected the miracle for the paralyzed guy. Well, we're all called to help carry paralyzed people. That's us, helping other people, not just ourselves, but helping other people come to these graces that Jesus alone can give us. Yes?
How can we, make Lent more significant, or how can we somehow relate to what's happening in Ukraine?
It is. I cannot comprehend having a country invaded, I cannot comprehend. I went through kind of a war zone, but it was drug lords, and I saw the results of that on a personal basis. But I can't comprehend all that. I think the one thing, or the few things that we are able to do is, our own personal prayers for that. And not just for the people in Ukraine, but for all of the places in the world where, if you will, injustices are taking place. It goes back to the deadly sins from St. Gregory the Great. As Gregory the Great said, pride is the first of the deadly sins because then that opens the door to the rest of them. And it causes the most amount of sin. Greed causes the worst sins. And we're seeing that now from Russia. Actually, I don't even think the Russian soldiers want to be there. It's all Vladimir Putin. But you can go back to World War I, World War II. It's all based on greed. And they cause the most severe sins. And so trying with ourselves, because we have to begin with ourselves, in what are we able to do. We can't change the circumstance, but we are able to offer our prayers, offer our penances, as we were asked to do yesterday, our fasting on Ash Wednesday. We can maybe make tomorrow, every Friday, a fast day for peace in Eastern Europe and throughout the world. And then be attentive to myself to say, how do I treat other people? You know? I mean, I don't know how many of you have to travel on, I hear this a lot because a lot of people in Caldwell work over here. So there are a lot of folks that travel on the freeway and not in a joyful manner. And so I tell them, I said, your quote unquote road rage is something that you are able to control if you desire to. I said, it's all up to you. And then the best is when there's silence on the other side of the screen, you know you've hit the nail on the head. The scream of silence. And so, but how am I promoting, justice, fairness, sharing love and grace with others? I can't change it over there, but I can affect my sphere of influence. And if you do the math, just those of us here tonight, tomorrow we'll probably encounter somewhere between 10 and 20 other people. And if we are conscious of our behavior around them and kindness and generosity, it may click with a couple of them. And then they may affect someone else. I mean, mathematically, if we are conscious of how we live our lives, we can affect change. And I'm no math wizard, but if you hit the calculator enough times, the number keeps going. So, anything else? Color good? Oh yeah, perfect. Too long, actually. Don't tell anybody in Caldwell we went for an hour and 20 minutes. They'll probably call you a liar. No. Father Mike would never go that long. Your clock was broken. Ruined my image. Oh, my pleasure. Thank you guys for coming.